and I made him watch. Hello and welcome back to And I Made Him Watch, the podcast where I make my husband watch weird movies and then we discuss how weird it really got. I'm your host, Dani Page, and here with me, as always, my handsome husband and talented filmmaker, Troy Allen. Say hello, honey.
Hello, honey.
I knew you were going to do that. How are you doing today?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing great.
Yeah,
doing great.
I'm loving this weather.
Oh yeah, it's pretty murky and gross outside and cold.
Yeah, it's very spooky.
A little bit, yeah, a little
Yeah.
bit. Are we going to talk about the weather on our podcast now?
Maybe. We're all about that doom and gloom, I guess.
So far. Okay, so we are making our way through Lucio Fulci's Gates of Hell trilogy. I kind of messed this up because I was intended to watch the movie Beyond, which happens to be the second movie in this trilogy, and I had no idea that it actually was a trilogy. So I had watched the Beyond a few years ago. So I had to start the trilogy over and I had to watch City of the Living Dead from 1980, and then I made you watch it.
Yes.
Yes. So when I started to rewatch this movie, and when I say rewatch, I had actually watched this a few years ago before I started like collecting synopsis of the weird movies I was watching. Mm-hmm. So I didn't have any notes about it, and I didn't really remember too much about it, but it was similar as soon as I started to watch it. And by the time we're done with this and this is released, I've watched this movie about 4.5 times now. So this is how I would describe the movie vaguely. This priest guy hangs himself, and this begins the process of opening up hell, apparently. There's a seance going on in New York, and it's so intense and scary that this medium, Mary, dies, but psych, she's not really dead. Enter this reporter that just so happens to find Mary buried alive, and this sets their course on stopping the hell to open. This movie had a little bit of everything. You've got ghosts and specters. You've got gore and bugs. So many bugs. Worm pudding is how I would describe it. And of course, you've got zombies in there too. This movie isn't awful, in my opinion. It's weird. Though the soundtrack, by the Italian composer Fabio Frizzi, I do believe is how you pronounce his last name, it really hits. I am digging the soundtrack. And I'd give this movie like a 6.5 out of 10, but mostly it's because of the music.
Well, that's definitely a lot higher than I would get.
Yeah?
It's, I just... like you said, it's got a little bit of everything. There's, a supernatural factor to it. There's, the undead. My first thoughts were that it felt very indie to me. Very low budget. Almost like they tried to stretch that budget a bit too far. And, in some aspects it paid off, and others it backfired. But yeah, I guess we'll dive into that more as we continue on in the episode.
We definitely will. The writer and director Lucio Fulci was an Italian film director known for his significant contributions to the horror genre. Born on June 17th, 1927 in Rome, Italy, Fulci began his career as a filmmaker in the 1950s, initially working on various genres, including comedies and westerns. It was in the 70s and 80s that Fulci gained recognition for his distinctive style within the horror genre. He became known for his atmospheric and often controversial films marked by graphic violence and surreal narratives. Fulci's works were celebrated, and are still celebrated, for the unsettling atmospheres and the memorable and sometimes shocking visuals. He inspires filmmakers with his emphasis on atmosphere and the uncanny of his visual, nightmarish films. Further, his contributions to the zombie subgenre, exemplified by his movie Zombie 2, have had a lasting impact on the contemporary horror portrayal of the undead. Filmmakers today recognize Fulci's unique vision as a significant contributor to the development of the horror cinema, and despite having faced criticism during his career. Although he played a huge part in the 70s and 80s and in the future of the horror genre, Fulci never won any rewards for his career as a filmmaker. He passed away on March 13th, 1996, but his influence on horror filmmaking continues to be felt and appreciated. Also, let's not forget Giordano Schiacci, I think is how he pronounced his name. I don't speak Italian, I'm sorry. Who helped write the script. He's an Italian screenwriter who was born in 1944 and has written scripts for many Italian directors, especially in the horror genre.
Interesting. Well, I don't speak Italian either.
Italian.
Buongiorno.
Wow. Okay. Let's get into our cast. The medium, Mary Woodhouse, is portrayed by the actress Catriona. I'm not sure how. It's Catriona, but it's also spelled with a K in the movie credits, I noticed today. McCoy. McCoy is an English actress who has worked extensively in both film and television across Europe. She was born on October 3rd, which is my brother's birthday, or one of my brother's birthdays, in 1954 in London, England. McCoy trained professionally as a ballerina from the age of 5 and attended the Royal Ballet School, but due to a foot injury, she couldn't continue her ballet career. She began her acting career in the late 70s, making her debut in the French romantic drama Les Derniers Amants Romantiques. I don't speak French either. Or The Last Romantic Lover in English. I always gotta look for the translation, okay? The story revolves around Elizabeth, an editor-in-chief of a New York women's magazine who organizes a contest to find the last romantic lover in Paris. She is credited with over 60 roles and continues to act. She also has produced and directed. Her most recent role is that of Dr. Andir in Isaac from 2023. This story revolves around Nicholas and Sarah, who enroll in a clinical trial launched by a GEO group, an established cellular meat company. That's a mouthful, and it's weird. After losing their first child to a genetic disease, the trial aims to create genetically modified babies using the company's technology. She received a Best Supporting Actress nomination at the New Jersey Film Awards. Additionally, in 2020, she was part of the winning Best Acting Ensemble at the New York International Film Awards for the film Borrowed Time. And then in 2022, she and her fellow cast members secured the Best Ensemble Award at the Vegas Movie Awards, again for the work in Borrowed Time.
Well, they sound very, very accomplished. And
she does, yes.
I can't say that I've seen her in anything else, to be honest.
You're gonna see more of her in the future. Let me tell you.
Absolutely.
Well, I'll say that because she's one of the actors that is the only stable actor in this trilogy. Okay. I think one of the other actors, one of the male actors, is in another one of the movies in the trilogy, but she is in all three, and she doesn't play the same character in all three. But we'll get into that as we watch the movies.
Yeah.
Our reporter, Peter Bell, is played by the actor Christopher George. Christopher George was an American actor who starred in several TV shows and movies in the 1960s and 70s, and is credited with over 50 acting roles. He was born on February 25th, 1931, to Greek immigrant parents. Christopher actually didn't speak English until he was 6 because his parents spoke strictly Greek at home. He enlisted in the United States Marine Corps at the age of 17 on October 13th, 1948 in Jacksonville, Florida.
Hey.
Yay. We've been there a few times.
Yeah.
Fueled by his admiration for John Wayne, he actually manipulated his birth year to 1929 on the recruitment form to false his age. And this actually affected the rest of his life. Despite encouragement to enter flight school, he opted for an honorable discharge in 1952, and George continued to serve in the Marine Corps reserves until 1956, receiving discharge on September 3rd. He entered the world of acting in New York City, initially performing on stage and in television commercials. His breakthrough occurred while working as a bouncer at a New York waterfront bar, where the producer Robert Rafelson convinced him to pursue an acting career. His screen debut occurred in the film In Harm's Way, providing him the opportunity to meet and work with his boyhood idol, John Wayne. And this actually marked the beginning of a lifelong friendship for him. So it was pretty cool, actually.
Yeah.
He's best known for his role as Sergeant Sam Troy in the war drama series The Rat Patrol, for which he received a Golden Globes nomination in 1967. The Rat Patrol was a 1960s drama about a team of 4 Allied commandos who fought against the Nazis in North Africa during World War II. Christopher George passed away from a heart attack at the age of 52, so super young, and on the late evening of November 28, 1983, at Westside Hospital in Los Angeles. It's worth noting that his age of death was incorrectly listed at 54 as a result of him altering his birth certificate when he entered the military.
Yeah.
While some sources have suggested that injuries from his time on the Rat Patrol could have contributed to his death, George's lifestyle, including smoking cigars, heavy drinking, known heart disease, and a history of coronary bypass surgery approximately 5 years prior, were probably significant factors. Especially, they were drinking and smoking and eating whatever they wanted to, like in the 60s and the 70s.
Yeah.
And the 80s, probably.
Cholesterol. I hardly even know her.
Wow. Wow. Okay. A couple of other actors worth mentioning are Carlo de Majo and Janet Agren. Carlo plays the psychiatrist Jerry, and that's Jerry with the G, and Janet plays one of his patients, Sandra. I couldn't find much about Carlo, but he was an Italian actor who was born in Rome in 1945. He is the son of the actress Aldea Bali and jazz composer Oscar de Majo. I don't know if I'm saying that name right. I'm sorry.
You're doing a fantastic job.
Thank you, baby.
Yeah.
That's so nice. He started his acting career as a minor role in the Battle of Sinai in 1968, but gained recognitions for his performance as a male prostitute in Pier Paolo Pasolini, the Roma. He also starred in an Italian adaptation of the musical Hair.
Hey.
He passed away in 2015.
Wow.
Janet Agren is a Swedish actress and model who was born in 1949. She moved to Italy in the late 1960s and started her film career in various genres such as comedy, drama, thriller, and horror. She had a modeling career which took her to Rome, where she studied acting. Her film debut was in Colpo di Stato, which roughly translates to Rebellion, in English from 1969. It is a satirical film that imagines a scenario where the Italian Communist Party wins in 1972 political elections, causing panic and chaos among the authorities and the public. She's credited with over 50 films, and in the 80s she had a brief musical career. She retired in the early 90s and moved to the U.S. with her husband.
Oh, that's sweet.
To retire?
Yeah. So, Jerry.
Yeah,
is it Jerry or Gary?
It's Jerry. It's
okay.
Gerry.
Okay, so in this film,
yes,
Jerry, I have named him Great Value Bob Ross.
Yeah, he looks like a Great Value Bob Ross.
Like beard, perm, the whole 9 yards. Like, he even wears, the button-up shirts and everything. Yep.
He also talks very soft.
He does.
Yes.
He does. He's very fitting to the role of
a psychiatrist.
Yes. So, Sandra, your girl Sandra need to calm down. She goes kind of crazy, in her big breakthrough scene or whatever. So, kind of wild.
Any input about Peter or Mary?
So Peter, he's the reporter dude.
Yes.
Right? Okay, so I called him a younger Tom Brokaw. I don't know if you know who Tom Brokaw is, but he's a retired journalist, reporter. But he kind of, I don't know. I think it's just like his demeanor and face. It just kind of reads Tom Brokaw to me. And then Mary, I don't even know where to begin with Mary.
It was like she couldn't decide if she had an accent or not in the movie.
Yeah.
Like she sounded very plain and like neutral most of the time, and then sometimes you would hear the English accent come out.
Yeah. And then like in the beginning, I don't want to ruin anything thus far, but it's almost like she couldn't use her words, period. She just would make like guttural sounds and screaming. So that's my take on those characters.
Okay. Now, when it comes to production, I couldn't find an exact budget, but it mentions a modest budget. And then at the box office on release date, the movie made a bit more than $500,000. And adjusting for inflation, that's about $2 million in 2024. You want to say something about it?
I think you meant inflation.
Inflation. What'd I say?
You said inflation.
Sorry. Inflation. I wrote inflation.
Real quick though, how much of that budget was spent on drugs? They don't have those facts.
I don't have those numbers. Right. I'm sorry.
I'm assuming at least a third.
I will get in touch with our research department, and I'll get onto them. For not having the information for you.
Great.
I'm sorry.
Great. Yep.
So, with that modest budget, the film was shot in various locations in the United States and in Italy. Some of the filming locations were Nyack, New York. This is where the seance scene, the opening credits are filmed. Rome, Italy. This is where the interior scenes were filmed, such as the morgue, the hospital, and library, and the priest home. Also, Savannah, Georgia represent.
Hey.
This is where all the scenes of Dunwich are filmed, including the cemetery, the bar, the hotel, and the church. I remember watching this because I watched this with Phil. Mm-hmm. I remember seeing that abandoned house that Bob goes into and being like, this looks so familiar. And I actually looked it up. I remember looking it up then. I'm like, yes, this is Georgia. So, I don't know if you even noticed it when we were watching it.
The only thing I noticed in those scenes that it was that it was obnoxiously windy, and it bothered the crap out of me. Because I just, you've got this it's like gale force winds coming across the scene, blowing all this dust and stuff, and then the trees in the background aren't even moving. It's like, okay.
Yeah.
I'll bite, I guess.
I'll point out some more stuff as we go through the movie and
Okay.
stuff. Okay. The film begins with the apparent suicide of Father Thomas, who hangs himself in the cemetery of the village Dunwich. One of the very first images we see is the tombstone that reads, "The soul that pines for eternity shall outspan death. You dweller of the twilight void come, Dunwich." This is a line from H.P. Lovecraft's novella The Dunwich Horror, which tells the story of Wilbur Whateley, I think, a monstrous offspring of a human mother and an alien father, who tries to summon an ancient evil god, Yog-Sothoth, to destroy the world. And I did a little research on this story, and boy, it is wild. This novella is also obviously the inspiration behind the name of the village, Dunwich, Massachusetts, which isn't a real place, just so you know. And maybe we'll watch a few H.P. Lovecraft movies. Have you ever watched any of the H.P. adaptations of Lovecraft? Or any movies, adaptations of Lovecraft stories?
I might have, but I don't think it would have really occurred to me. I'm not a huge reader, I guess.
Okay.
So
I've watched, obviously, no, me being me, I've seen a few.
right.
We may watch, actually, I know for a fact that we are going to watch some in the future.
Obviously.
Fulci had just reread Lovecraft before beginning the script for City of the Living Dead. The whole trilogy is heavily inspired by Lovecraftian horror, in my opinion. While the father is hanging on from a rope, a seance is being held in New York in the apartment of medium Teresa. This apartment, by the way, is my interior design inspo. I love the way her apartment looks.
It was very eclectic.
It's so cool.
Yeah, it definitely reads you, though, for sure.
During the seance, fellow medium Mary Woodhouse has a traumatic vision of Father Thomas hanging himself. This vision is so intense and violent that Mary suddenly dies. The atmospheric sounds during these scenes are very haunting. It's like a sound of a baby crying, but it's warped, so it almost sounds animalistic. So the police show up to the scene at Teresa's apartment and pretty much do nothing. There's this part where fire just randomly shows up in the apartment, and I don't think it's actually like figured out what it is or mentioned ever again.
It's never mentioned again in the whole movie.
Enter Peter Bell, a reporter who begins to investigate Mary's sudden death. Meanwhile, in Dunwich, things are getting weird. We meet Bob. Bob is just a simple guy who just wants to live his life. He's quiet and he's described as a vagrant. We watch him wander into this abandoned house where he has stashed a blow-up doll. I'm not sure if this is just his or if other people like left it there, but it's clear in the movie that he knows where it's hidden. And it's like this instant inflatable doll too, because he just kind of tosses it on the ground and it just blows up by itself. And I've never had any encounters with blow-up dolls, but I don't think that's how they work.
Like, what the fuck was the scene?
It was definitely like reversed, like
yeah, the blow up of the doll,
Yes.
yeah. But like, so he throws the doll, and he's got this like really like, I don't know, like this like really evilish grin, and he throws the doll, and hit the makeup like. I don't know if you noticed the makeup, but it was very like vaudevillian.
I think it's meant to like show how wary he is, and like because he's a vagrant, he's supposed to be homeless and wandering, and like he's supposed to look rough.
I can see that. Yeah.
Bob's fun is ruined by this disgusting carcass, and it's pretty gnarly. I think it's implied that it's supposed to be a baby's carcass, but its head's too big and there's no details to the body. It's just covered, and this is the only way I can describe it. What looks like worm pudding.
Yeah. I put down special effects is terrible. The guy throwing the blow up doll, and then suddenly there's a quote rotting body on the table. What the fuck is this movie? I honestly no idea, but it's wild. It's definitely a wild ride, for sure.
Yeah. Okay, we start to see more strange events happening in Dunwich. At a local bar, a mirror breaks on its own and the wall cracks. And then we hear these sounds of moaning coming from this new opening in the wall. I think it's supposed to be like suggested this is one of the gates, I guess, of hell, or one of the portals to hell. But it makes the patrons freak out and everyone leaves. We're also introduced to Dr. Gary, a psychiatrist, his patient Sandra, and then Gary's 19-year-old girlfriend and personal assistant, Emily. Yeah. We learn that Emily is going to see Bob, who she has been trying to help. Sandra mentions that Bob is disliked because of his mother, who was loose with her morals and could be labeled as a witch. More on that later. So, back in New York, while in the graveyard, Peter watches a couple of horned up gravediggers begin burying Mary's coffin. Then it hits 5 p.m. and they're all like, union hours, and leave her half buried. Unknowns to them and Peter, Mary has awoken inside her coffin and does what everyone would do and freaks the fuck out. Luckily, Peter hears Mary screaming just in time to grab a pickaxe and start cracking open her coffin. So, little side note, during the scene, the actress Catriona kept closing and flinching away from the pickaxe, and the scene had to be filmed several times. Apparently, Fulci was getting frustrated with her and had gotten to the coffin to show her how to do it without flinching. Quote, "It was just a nervous reaction, and Lucio was getting crosser and crosser. He pulled me out of the coffin and shouted, 'I'll show you how easy it is.' So he climbed into the coffin and did the same shot without blinking. 'If I can do it, you can do it,' he said." And that was the actress talking about the scene. Also, the lighting in this coffin where it looks like there's a skull on Mary's face. Dude.
I would like to... There's a few things about this scene that I would like to point out.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, so first off, I guess you would call them gravediggers, are taking lunch in the middle of what seems to be exhuming a body, a skeletal, remains, and they're just sitting there, eating their sandwiches and stuff, and you got great value Vince Vaughn.
Yes, he does look like a great
and Vince fucking Tom Petty. I mean, he was Tom Petty.
He was. He did. He did look.
And so, and then to make matters worse, okay, they go. So the Tom Brokaw dude, the reporter guy, he walks up to Mary's coffin, and he starts. He uses the coffin as somewhere to write on, and then there's for some reason a mirror inside the casket, so Mary can check her makeup, I guess, and and then the two gravediggers walk up. They take the casket and just start, burying Mary. It's like there's no funeral, there's no nothing. It's like she's having some sort of pauper's funeral, like nobody knew her. And then, to make matters worse, they get halfway through the burial, and it's 5 o'clock. Time, it's quitting time. So, I just, it was definitely a wild scene for sure.
Yeah, I was trying to Google search like if there was anything about mirrors and casket, and Google says with an aim to evoke reflection and empathy for the deaths of young people of color who have lost their lives unjustly in the United States and worldwide. I don't think that applies here because Mary is definitely a white woman.
Yep.
So, Peter and Mary go back to Teresa's house, where she explains that according to the Book of Enoch, the events Mary witnessed are the forewarning that the living dead will rise up. That the death of Father Thomas has begun opening the gates of hell, and they have until All Saints' Day to stop it. And guess what? All Saints' Day is in like 3 days. So the Book of Enoch is actually a real book. Have you ever heard of this?
Mm-mm.
Okay.
No.
I started to go down a rabbit hole with this, and if we were doing like a history or just a general topic podcast, we could do a whole series about the Book of Enoch. The book contains unique materials on the origins of demons and nymphlims. Do you know what an nymphlum is?
No idea.
Nymphlum is what they claim is the offspring of mortal women and angels.
Interesting.
Yeah. And why some angels fell from heaven, the explanation of why the Genesis flood was morally necessary, and a prophetic exposition on the 1,000-year-old reign of the Messiah. But it's not considered canon, apparently, by a lot of Christians. Although at one point it was cherished by Jews and Christians alike, it fell into disfavor due to the controversial statements about the deeds of fallen angels. But, just more picking and choosing, if you know what I mean.
Right. And I'm assuming it's got nothing to do with talking to the dead or anything like that. I
didn't read the whole thing. So I did a little research because, like I said, I was getting in there. And I knew I had to finish this.
I mean,
so I didn't.
I feel like at this point they could have just had like the Necronomicon and been perfectly fine.
Probably, yes.
Yeah.
Do you want to ask about All Saints' Day? Do you know what All Saints' Day is?
What is All Saints' Day?
It's like Christian Halloween.
Oh, okay.
That's cool. Literally what it is.
Nice.
Again,
Hey, Halloween's cool.
Yeah.
Halloween is cool.
So Emily finds Bob. Bob runs away. Emily is fed a mouthful of warm pudding by the apparition of Father Thomas, killing her.
Interesting. Wow. Who saw that coming?
I don't know.
No one. Also, I would like to point out, like, what is up with the extreme close-ups,
There was a lot, right?
There was a ton of extreme close-ups, and especially during, like, dialogue scenes and stuff, where you got, like, 3 people talking, and then all of a sudden you've got, like, these crash zooms to just eyes, which I think, I'm not sure, but I think it's because it's easier to sync audio recorded in post-production if you're shooting extreme close-ups because you can't see their lips moving.
You know what? You might be onto something.
Because
you might be onto something.
It really did seem like in a majority of the scenes where people are talking, their lips just did not match what they were saying, or like it didn't match the emotion they were putting into the lines and stuff. So it definitely felt off.
I don't remember reading anything about the audio being recorded after. So
if I were a betting man,
yeah,
and I have been known to bet, I would say that it was recorded in post.
Okay.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
So Father Thomas has been pretty busy this night because next we have the scene where we have 2 teenagers, Tommy and Rose, who are necking in the car. It's one of those classic scenes where the guy tries to get it in and the girl's like, "Did you hear that?" Also, the scene is awkward and you can really tell that the actress wasn't really into it. Did you notice that? Her mouth.
A little bit, yeah.
She wasn't kissing him back. Her lips completely sealed.
Yeah. Yeah. Like she was not into his advances at all.
Father Thomas shows up, and he and the girl, Rose, have a staring contest, and he wins. The girl's eyes start to bleed, and then she is disemboweled through her mouth.
That's what that was.
Yes. The actress, Daniela Doria, is actually spitting up baby veal intestines. And then she's replaced with like this paper mache head for the rest of the scene. We also get our first brain squish here.
Yeah. So Tommy, poor Tommy.
Yeah, he tried to get out, man.
Yeah,
He tried to leave.
I feel so bad for Tommy because he's literally just out there trying to get it in, and
he tried to get it wet.
You know, and then he gets his brains pulled out of through the back of his skull.
Just a little brain squish.
What did you do to upset these, ghostly zombie people, Tommy? Goodness.
So while Peter and Mary hit the road back in Dunwich, they finally find Emily's body. The cops are pretty useless here too, by the way. But hey, they found more worm pudding here.
They sure did.
Yes. Soon after, we get to the mortuary scene. Emily's family and the inappropriate older boyfriend, Jerry, show up. The mortician is still prepping Emily's body and is very creepy looking. This guy is pretty creepy.
This guy needs to be fired immediately, okay? Because Emily's body, he, quote, preps her, but her mouth is like agape, and then I think it's in the next scene where he's like he steals her fucking necklace.
Yes.
It's like, good God, man.
We also learn here that the old Mrs. Holden, whoever that was, has also died, and apparently from fright. Back at the boys' club, or Junie's bar, the bar from earlier, the guys are talking about the missing people. People are slowly starting to disappear and die. 5 people in the last 48 hours or so. All these manly men are blaming Bob. And he's not got a good history with the locals. It's worth noting that originally in Shakati's, the screenwriter, I wish I spoke other languages other than English.
You're giving it your all.
I'm trying. In his original writing for the story, it was actually set in Salem. Earlier in the movie, it's revealed that the ancestors of Dunwich are Salem witch burners, is what Emily calls them in Jerry's office. And I'm about to get a little deep now. The witch hunt of Bob is a theme that reflects the fear and paranoia of the townspeople of Dunwich, who are facing the threat of the living dead. And it's something they can't explain, He is accused of being a murderer and a necrophile by the locals, who blame him for the strange events that are happening in the town. He is constantly harassed and attacked by the locals. Using Bob as a fictional example shows how irrational fear of the unknown can lead to violence and injustice. It also contrasts with the real evil that has lurked in the town, which is the result of a priest's suicide. And in opening the gates of hell, the town people are unaware of the true cause of their problems, and the scapegoat, Bob, who is kind of innocent and harmless in a way, is punished for their ignorance. It's very much a lean and nod towards the actual Salem witch trials, where we have a group of people, locals, who focus in on these outcasts and start to blame them for the problems. Mm-hmm. It's very much a deep underlining of the film.
Yeah, absolutely. I can see that for sure. And it does feel like, it basically just spurs this witch hunt, like you were saying. And Bob, being who he is, he's just kind of in the wrong place at the wrong time.
Yeah. Things are starting to pick up around Dunwich. While Peter and Mary are wandering around trying to find the place, seeming to get lost, a vision of Father Thomas appears to Bob when he returns to the deserted house that evening. Bob is forced to find somewhere else to sleep safely and ends up in the back of the car. Immediately after Emily's funeral, her younger brother John sees Emily's ghost doing ghost things outside his window. Meanwhile, over at Sandra's place, she's chilling and making art, and the painting is of this beach and then like a rhino head like floating in the sky. Did you notice that?
I did.
Yeah.
I wasn't paying attention to what she was painting. No.
When she starts to hear some weird sounds, she freaks out and calls her doctor for some reason. I guess she doesn't really have any friends or family locally.
I know what it was. Okay, so she's painting, right?
Yeah.
And who better to call than Great Value Bob Ross? I mean...
Yep, that's it. That's what it was.
That's what it was.
So Jerry comes over, and they find the corpse of Mrs. Holden from earlier, you remember?
Yes.
Okay. Sandra finds her corpse just laying in the floor of her kitchen. The body then disappears once Jerry has calmed Sandra down a little. And they continue to hear things within the house, and Sandra goes fucking crazy again. This continues for a while as they search the house for the corpse. And at some points, the lights are cut off, and then they come back on, and glass has been embedded into the wall, and it starts to bleed.
Sandra says, "Good God, it's blood." And I died. I thought that was so funny. It was so funny. It was a great line.
So our sleepy boy Bob wakes up in the back of the car and is discovered by Anne. It was mentioned early in the movie by one of the guys at the bar that Anne Ross had been found in the woods with Bob at one point, and they were really worried that Bob was going to do something to her or something. So he's woken up by Anne, who is the daughter of Mr. Ross. She offers to share a joint with him, and then Anne's dad bursts up in there and starts to attack Bob. Mr. Ross ends up killing Bob by pushing a drill through the temple of his head, and it's so gory that when it was originally released, that part was actually cut out in the UK.
Yeah, I had to prepare myself for that because I didn't know exactly what was going to happen, but I don't know, considering the power dynamic there, I just went ahead and told myself that Bob's going to die.
Yeah.
Bob's dying right now. And then when it happened, I was just like, holy fuck. Bob died. Big time.
I think nowadays when we get that type of anticipation, when we see like murder and killing like that, it's happened so often where there's a pullback from the actual situation and it doesn't happen. And then you get to see it in these older movies. Mm-hmm. And I think when I was watching it, I expected that like pull away. I expected like Anne to like turn the drill off or pull it out of the plug, but then it happened and I was like, damn, Bob deserved better.
Yeah, no, as soon as her dad came in, whatever his name was, Anne...
Mr. Ross.
Yeah, Anne just bounced.
Yeah, Anne was like, no, I'm out. I gotta smoke this joint.
Yeah.
I gotta go.
She's like, I got shit to do.
So eventually our two couples meet up in the cemetery from Mary's vision. They have a little catch-up meeting at Jerry's office, and suddenly they are showered with maggots. They used 10 kilograms or about 22 pounds of maggots in this scene.
I would like to say that there were no worms harmed during the production of this film, but there were a fuck ton of worms. So I would imagine...
Are maggots worms?
No, they're larvae.
Yeah.
Yeah, but still, like...
I think they say worms in the movie.
Yeah. Because when in the movie, they seem more like... I don't know if you know what mealworms are.
I know, yeah.
Yeah, but that's what they seem like to me. And the fact that they were, like, clinging to their faces and stuff...
I think they were glued. I think special effects in the makeup department had to glue them to their face at some point.
Yeah, to me, that would make more sense.
Yeah.
But, yeah, there were so many worms.
So, on set, Fulci was known to carry around his own tobacco for his pipe. As a surprise for Fulci, one crew member hid some of the maggots in his pipe tobacco. And Fulci learned about it after puffing on it. Like, he actually smoked some of the maggots.
Wow.
Which pissed the guy off. Later in his life, he kind of blamed this incident for leading to his poor health. It's rumored that it had been the actor Christopher George himself who had done this, but there's no real evidence other than the rumor that the director and actor didn't really get along on set. Yeah. So, after the storm of maggots, Gary gets a call from John. And he picks up the phone like this shit they just move on. You know, like, crazy shit's been happening. They know what's up. But he just wipes the phone off and picks it up. He's like, hello. He doesn't even say hello. It's like, who's speaking? Or something like that.
I just thought it was so crazy. To be honest, so this phone call, to me, I feel like this phone call had the best line in the film.
Oh, yeah? What was it?
And I don't remember exactly word for word, but it was basically like, so John tells Gary.
Well, we don't hear what John says, just so the listeners know.
Right. But Jerry says that John has told him that Emily, who is dead, has killed her parents.
Yes. And
then he says, and this was after he hangs up the phone, but he says, Emily killed her parents, but Emily died 2 days ago. Yes. So to me, I was just like, when he said that, I kind of got chills. I was like, "Ooh, man, that's actually good writing." You know, surprisingly enough.
So soon, John joins the group, and Sandra is given the responsibility of looking after him as the other three begin their investigation to stop all hell breaking loose. Unfortunately for Sandra, Emily is waiting for them when they get home, I think they went to Jerry's studio, and gives her the old brain squish.
Yeah, that's so unfortunate too, because I was kind of rooting for Sandra.
Really?
Yeah, like, even though she was kind of, batshit crazy, but like, I feel like she had a chance.
So this scene after Sandra dies and John's kind of like just running away from these zombies, that's all Savannah. All those, the cobblestone and the bridge, that's actually River Street.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Okay. Yeah.
And then all those houses align in the old Victorians and stuff, that we've actually seen those houses. Right.
So the one thing that stood out to me during those shots is that we're led to believe that there's these like street lamps, and they're just casting these rays down, this light, but you don't see any lampposts. So it's literally like the DP decided to just hang lights, and they're just unmotivated lights. So I don't know, it bothered me. As a cinematographer, you should never have unmotivated light, because it, like, bad cinematography is cinematography that you notice.
Interesting.
So, yeah.
Interesting. So after John is rescued by Jerry, who seems very nonchalant about this zombie that he sees, like, face to face, and all this zombie killings and chomping and stuff, this zombie's just like, nah, Jerry, I'm not gonna fuck with you. I'm just gonna disappear. So he's given to the police, who've done so much in this movie. They're really on top of things. The trio head to the graveyard again. Meanwhile, the missing and dead people, who are now these worm-ridden zombies, begin to attack the bar. And because guess what? It's All Saints Day.
Halloween.
Yeah, pretty much. I think it's November 1st.
Wow.
Yeah. They just, gotta have all of them holidays, you know what I mean? Just gotta. Anyway, the trio find Father Thomas's family tomb, and they open it. And I don't really think it's ever explained why they actually have to open it and find his body. I guess it's just somehow known that's what they have to do. They find the tomb, and when they open it, it's empty as fuck.
Somebody stole this body.
Someone has broken through, or someone has escaped through the other side of the tomb. So the trio ascend deeper into the grave. And Sandra shows up and gives Peter the whole brain squish, allowing Jerry allowing Jerry and Mary to go deeper into the catacomb.
So, Peter, Tom Brokaw dude, as I call him, he gets his brain squeezed out.
Yep.
Which is a recurring theme in the film.
Yeah.
And then Mary, all of a sudden, is crying blood.
Oh, yeah. So somehow Sandra has the same power, the same hypno gaze as the priest does. Because we have all these other, like, zombies and stuff. And none of them have this, like, stare power, but Sandra does.
Right.
And then, so Mary has the blood tears.
And then Gary
stabs her.
A.K.A. Great Value Bob Ross, stabs Sandra, who is now bleeding profusely. Which I must point out is weird, considering that Sandra is dead.
Yes.
Dead people typically do not bleed.
Yes.
Typically. So, there's that.
What did you tell me last episode? It's a movie.
It's a movie.
It's a movie. The pair continue into this, like, catacomb, and you even mentioned that there's all these bodies. Mm-hmm. And I explained that, it was rumored to be, like, buried on top of the original Salem.
Right.
So you have a lot of zombies walking around in there that have, like, these old peasant blouses and stuff and everything. The pair continued until they come face to face with Father Thomas, who was leading an army of undead. Father Thomas does his weird hypno eye thing, stare off with Mary, and she starts to get all, like, bloody-eyed and stuff again. But before he can kill Mary, Jerry grabs a wooden cross and disembowels Father Thomas. You would think he would go for, like, the brain or the heart. Nope, just straight to the bowels. Right? It was more the dick, honestly, if we're being honest.
Yeah. Yeah.
The priest and the other dead burst into flames and then disappear.
Which to me was very, I don't know, vampiric of them to
a little
burst
bit,
into
yes,
flames. Yeah. I did not understand anything that was going on in this scene. So
you gotta have an ending.
I guess. Yeah.
You gotta have an ending.
Point. Well, it's like I said earlier, they spent a third of the film's budget on drugs.
Probably.
And then they just got to the end and were just like, what are we doing? I don't know, just film something.
Disembowel the priest.
Just stab him. It's okay. If you say so.
So, Mary and Jerry exit Father Thomas's tomb and into the graveyard in the morning to see John and the police. The very ending is so strange to me. As they emerge from this tomb, they see John, and John's happy, yelling, screaming like, Mary, Jerry, and running towards him. And Mary just starts to scream bloody murder until the screen cracks into black. And that is the ending that we are given.
Yep. Roll credits. Yep. I don't know what I was expecting from this film, but it definitely wasn't that. I think it would, for it being 1980.
Yes.
I feel like it would have been, kind of like shock horror at best, and people probably would have found it scary.
Oh yeah, definitely. It was. Yeah.
But here in 2024. We're so desensitized to everything. I found myself laughing a lot.
Yeah, you did. I mean, I've watched this movie, 4.5 times. So I even said it a few times, especially during the Rose getting disemboweled through her mouth and all the innards and even like the stomach comes out of her mouth. I'm like, yeah, I've seen this movie like 4 times. So
yeah. Well, when I first watched it, I had no idea what the hell that was, and you were just like,
yeah,
you'll see.
Just wait. You just wait.
Yeah, you just wait.
You'll know what I know.
I mean, but there were so many like weird things in this movie, like when Peter, Mary, Gary, and Sandra get back to the funeral home, and they're walking through the room with all the caskets in it, and then the camera like zooms in on this handprint on the carpet. Like, what the hell was that supposed to be?
I don't know.
Maybe that's where like Mrs. Holden got out.
Maybe, yeah.
Which I have to point out,
she's still hanging out.
She's still hanging out in Sandra's house.
She is.
Yeah, we never saw her again.
There are several people we re-see as zombies, but not everybody.
No,
I think it's mostly Tommy, Rose, and Emily we see as zombies again.
Yeah,
like there's 3 zombies in this movie.
Yeah,
and then all the crusty old ones down in the tomb.
Yeah, I think had they brought back Great Value Vince Vaughn and Tom Petty in the end of the movie, you know, like
they were in New York though.
Well, I'm just saying, like you see Gary and Mary come out of the tomb at the end of the movie, and then John's running, right, and then the camera just cuts over to Tom Petty and Great Value Vince Vaughn. They just look at each other like, what the fuck is going on? Where'd you guys come from?
All in all, what do you rate this movie?
So, I gave it a 4 out of 10.
4 out of 10.
Yeah,
okay.
This is definitely one of the worst films that I've seen.
Wow, really?
And
you're gonna love the rest of this trilogy.
I know, and I feel like worst is a very strong word.
It is,
and I don't know. It was just bad overall.
Listen, I have watched a lot of weird vintage movies in my day, and I have probably at least 10 so far that we're going to watch that I've watched like a few years ago. This one is a 6.5 out of 10. Okay, listen, I want you to look me in my eye. Look me in my eyes. Let me. How serious? This one is not the worst. It's gonna get bad.
So I've set the bar too high, is what you're saying.
You have.
Okay,
yes.
So I'm just going to take the bar out of the equation.
You know what? We're going to finish this trilogy, and we'll come back, okay? And I'll let you say what you want to say about each 3 at the end of the last episode of the trilogy.
Okay. All right. Okay. That's fair, I would say.
All right. Thank you all for watching this. Or not watching. I say watching every time. Thank you for listening.
Yeah. Thanks for listening. Be sure to follow us on all of our socials at Made Him Watch. And you can listen to this podcast and the rest of our episodes on Spotify and everywhere else you get your podcast from.
Yep.
So.
Bye.
Yeah. Bye-bye. Big thanks for hanging out with us on And I Made Him Watch, hosted by the one and only Danny Page. A round of applause for Danny's meticulous research and creative brilliance, with Troy Allen bringing the technical magic and editing mastery to the mix. Our ears were serenaded by the fantastic tunes composed and performed by the incredible Tori Wolf, and a massive shout out to Epidemic Sound for keeping our ears happy. As we wrap up this cinematic escapade, gear up for the next thrilling chapter of And I Made Him Watch, where Danny takes the lead once again, dragging me into the abyss with the beyond. Buckle up for the excitement, the unexpected, and all the movie madness that awaits in our podcast adventure. Keep those popcorn bowls close. Thank you for joining us on this unforgettable film-filled ride.